This is my top 10 gaming, music and soundtracks. Alright everyone, hope you are doing well. Thanks for pressing play once again. Welcome to a video I've been wanting to do for a while now, but just never quite known how to do it. I wasn't sure how to do this the best way really. So this is my top 10 music and gaming soundtracks. And yeah, I find it very hard to talk about music because I'm not a musician myself. Music has been a big part of my life. I absolutely love music. I'm a big sort of rock guy, classic rock. Get all that from my dad, and spent a lot of my time with my dad when I was younger, you know, trawling around HMV and music shops and all that sort of thing. And he was always playing music at our house as well. So I was brought up with, you know, that kind of classic rock, Fleetwood Mac and things like that. And that's kind of the stuff that I like now, and that has a very sort of big bearing on some of the music I like in my video games. If you follow me on Instagram as well, you'll know that, you know, there's a lot of stuff on that I put on Instagram, pictures of games, but you know, I put a bit of thought into what music goes in on those posts as well. It's the best thing Instagram ever did, was actually put music or give you the option to put music on your post. So I loved that. So yeah, so for me, gaming, the music in games is such a big part of it for me. A lot of my sort of favourite games of all time are in sort of like my top 10 games, partly because of the music. You know, it has a big influence on how I view a game and how much I enjoy a game, the soundtracks. Like I said before, I do kind of like that kind of rock music and classic rock, metal, that sort of thing. But I do have a thing for like movie scores as well. And you'll know from, you know, videos that you've watched on this channel, I quite often reference like the game's score or music. You know, I'll sort of say, oh, you know, the music for this is really good or whatever, the score's amazing. Because yeah, it's such a big thing for me. That's a big part of gaming for me, the music. So I've picked a top 10. It's a fairly I could have picked loads actually. I could have picked quite a few sort of. I mean, there's a mix of sort of soundtracks and individual pieces of music in this top 10. It's a bit of a mix. Some games, you know, I just like the whole sort of score, and in some games there's just one or two bits of music which kind of influence the rest of the game's music, but it's that particular bit of music that I really like. Anyway, I thought the best way to do this would be for less of me talking, if I can, and more of the music itself. So if I can circumnavigate the copyright overlords, hopefully this video will go okay and I'll be able to play some of the tracks from some of the games. So let's just get straight into it. As always, no particular order to this. It is a top 10, but there's no sort of order, but I do save probably my favourite soundtrack until the very last game. So first up, I've gone for Super Probotector Alien Rebels on the Super Nintendo, also known as Contra 3, the Alien Wars. But yeah, this is a game that it was very close whether I was going to include this or Super Castlevania, because I do love that score. To be fair, Castlevania Symphony of the Night could have made it into this top 10 as well, because that is such an amazing score, but it didn't. But anyway, I've gone with Super Probotector. It's just very epic, very action orientated. Let's take a listen to some of it now. Right, next up, and I've gone for this one, Mirror's Edge. Now this is partly because I really love the track I'm Still Alive, which featured on all of the sort of promotional adverts and that sort of thing for this game, but it also features sort of through the core game as well. There's elements of it throughout the game, especially in the intro and the start of the game. Mirror's Edge is just a favourite of mine. Very sort of aesthetically, the whole sort of package I think works really well. The way the game looks and the sound of the game as well. So let's take a listen to a bit of Mirror's Edge. Next up, and I said I like rock music. Now I'm not going to be able to play any of this one because I don't think I would get away with it copyright wise, but for me and the music taste that I have, there probably isn't a better overall. This game practically has my Spotify playlist on it almost, and the game is Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock. Now I just have this game. I don't have the guitar anymore. I used to have it and I used to really quite like the game, but that's partly because of the absolute huge number of tunes on this that I absolutely love. I mean, there's over 70 tracks. You've got Anarchy in the UK, Welcome to the Jungle, Paint It Black, Paranoid, Bulls on Parade, She Bangs the Drum. That's just the ones on the back. I think there's also like Barracuda by Heart is on there. What else was that? Cult of Personality is on this game as well. If you don't know what that is, that's the song that CM Punk comes out to in WWE at the moment by Living Colour. So yeah, even that is on there. Slow Ride's on there. There's stuff by Alice Cooper and Poison. It's just everything that's right up my street. So Guitar Hero 3 easily gets into my sort of top 10 gaming soundtracks. Like I said, I do kind of like those kind of movie scores. I do like moody, dark movie scores too. And this game has probably one of the darkest scores of a game I've ever played, really. And that game is Deus Ex Human Revolution. Now, I've spoken about this game quite a lot because I do love this game. I think it's absolutely amazing. But it does have that amazing score throughout the game. It's quite sort of dark. It's very synth orientated. A lot of sort of low basses to it as well. It's hard to describe, but it gets more epic as the game goes on as well. So yeah, I absolutely love the score to this. This augmented edition as well actually comes with somewhere in there the soundtrack CD, I think, as well. Is it the soundtrack CD? It was a bonus DVD, I think. So yeah, that soundtrack is actually included in this as well, so it's worth getting that just for that. Next up, and this one is my favourite game of all time. You'll know what this game is if you've been watching my channel for any length of time. It is, of course, Mass Effect 2. A huge part of why I love this game so much is the soundtrack and the score. Jack Wall was the composer for the score, and there is so much music in this game as well. And that is the thing with music in video games these days. It's so complex, and games are so big, and there's so many different sort of routes that games can go down, so there has to be music for every single kind of branching storyline to these kind of games. So the sheer amount of music when you see it broken down in a list, it's absolutely incredible. There's I'm sure there's like over 80 tracks, individual pieces of music in this game. But you can get like the soundtrack as a sort of collective score, if you like, as well. And some of the pieces of music in that are just absolutely amazing too. I'm thinking like the opening to this game, which if you've never played it, I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's a scene with the Normandy, and part of that, the whole sort of epicness of that moment of that game, is increased by the score and the music that accompanies it as well. So yeah, absolutely incredible game. I absolutely love it, and I absolutely love the score as well. And the next game, I think this is probably a bit of an obvious choice. I think most people, or a lot of people certainly, would probably have this in their top 10 for music. I like it specifically maybe for one track on there, but I mean the rest of the score is absolutely amazing. Actually, it's collectively it's just an incredible score. And again, the size of this game, Final Fantasy VII, means there is so much music, and I suppose it was only with the advent of games coming onto CD and then Blu-ray that it's allowed us to have this kind of musical epic, the huge amount of music that goes into these games now. On cartridges, back in the SNES and the Mega Drive days, you just couldn't have that kind of score. Don't get me wrong, there's some amazing scores on those games, but sort of sheer quantity of music that you get on later games that have come on disc is incredible, and this is a good example of that. My favourite bit of music from Final Fantasy is obviously, it's probably the obvious choice, but is the battle music, which I'll play now. Cheers everyone, so we're cracking on through these now. And I'd say this one is probably my wild card. You probably wouldn't see this in anybody else's soundtrack kind of top 10, but I just love the music to this game. So it might come as a bit of a surprise, but I do love the composer of this as well. So he's a well-known composer, did so many amazing films. The game is Crysis 2, and the composer was Hans Zimmer. So you will probably know Hans Zimmer from, or you'll certainly have heard his music somewhere. But if you've ever watched a Christopher Nolan film, he's done most of those. The Batman, Dark Knight trilogy, Interstellar, all sorts of films. But he also did the soundtrack or score for Crysis 2 as well. So let's take a listen to the opening to Crysis 2. One which might be a slight sort of wild card perhaps is a game that I don't actually have anymore, but I played it back in the day. I played it when I was a kid, and I loved it back then, and I even appreciate it even more now. And that game is Rock and Roll Racing, which you could get on the SNES, and it was on the Mega Drive as well. And like it says in the title, it's all about rock and roll. And it's a great game, really good little racing game, a bit like the sort of, is it ATV Monster Trucks or whatever it was called. There's a few games of its kind like back in the day, but this was a bit more sort of like with power-ups and a bit more sort of Mario Kart maybe, but it had that rock and roll soundtrack to it. And there was only about 4, 5, 6 tracks on it. I think the Mega Drive one had an extra couple of tracks on it, but it included stuff like Bad to the Bone and Paranoid by Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne. So 16-bit versions of those, and I've listened to it since, and they are amazing. And just because of that, I've included it in this. Final 2 games. This one I think is probably the most obvious choice of all of them. I think if you asked anybody to name a piece of video game music, a lot of people of a certain age perhaps would pick this game. It's Yuzo Koshiro's finest. It's Streets of Rage 2. And there's so many amazing tracks on this game. So many amazing tracks. You know, it's some of the is it the second track for the first level is you know, it's been made into sort of memes and stuff like that. You see people kind of like dancing to it. It's just an amazing score and a soundtrack, and it has that really cool kind of 16-bit sound to it as well. But it's very of its time too. It sounds very much like an early 90s dance kind of soundtrack, a lot of it. Yeah, I just love it. Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack. The final game. Now, I love every single bit of music from this game. Every single bit of music from this game. So it is a soundtrack pick, this one. You will know which game it is as soon as I sort of play this music. And that gives it away straight away, of course. It is Street Fighter 2. I've picked Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting Anniversary Edition just because it's a cool cover. It's a bit bigger on screen. But yeah, the original Street Fighter 2 soundtrack. I love every single track off this. Partly because I suppose it was the first game I ever kind of obsessed over. You know, I played it to death on the SNES. I played it a lot in the arcades as well. And it gives me a lot of nostalgia, sort of the music for it as well. Especially that intro music where, you know, I just remember going into arcades in the early 90s as a kid, dark, dingy, smoky, and all you could hear was all these beeps and noises coming from all these arcade cabinets. But over the top of them, you could usually always hear that opening music from Street Fighter 2, or at very least you could hear like a fight and sound effects from Street Fighter 2 as well. Everything about the Street Fighter 2 soundtrack for me is just unbelievably well done. Every song for every character and every character stage matches that character perfectly and is instantly sort of memorable and recognizable. You know, you think of like Guile's kind of almost like Top Gun bravado kind of music, Chun-Li's Oriental bop, Zangief's heavy kind of Russian beat, if you like. Yeah, just every single track in the game is just absolutely amazing. My personal favourite piece of music from the game, though, is this guy's stage music. So that is it. That is my top 10 games and soundtracks and some pieces of music from games. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope that was a little bit something different with the music sort of interspersed into the video, and a little bit less of me talking for a change, just about. But yeah, I always think it's quite a nice discussion point, and quite a good one. So I'd love to know what your favourite pieces of music from games are, what your favourite game soundtracks are. Get it into the comments. As always, I will always try to reply and get a conversation going. I love it when people get interactive with the channel. It's great. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you next time.